Ciao and welcome. Today I'll be cooking carne alla pizzaiola. This is another southern Italian stroke Sicilian dish, and something which I used to love as a child, and if you've got children they are also going to love, because it tastes very much like pizza, but it isn't pizza. One of the features of carne alla pizzaiola is to use breadcrumbs, and I'm using wet breadcrumbs, if you like, or fresh breadcrumbs. There is still a bit pieces here. So whenever I've got any stale bread left over, I keep it and then I whiz it, and I make wet breadcrumbs or fresh breadcrumbs. And anything that I don't know use, then I'll freeze as it is, and I can use it again. But you can also use dry breadcrumbs if you wish, but if you do, ensure that you use a little bit more sauce, as they will be absorbing more liquid. And that's it done, and you can see that the consistency of the breadcrumbs is still a little bit rough, which is perfect for carne alla pizzaiola. And as often is the case with these dishes, you will need a little soffritto, and there will be a base of onion and garlic today. So I'll start with the onion first. I'm using a white onion, but you can use any onions you like. Red would be also very nice. Personal choices, entirely up to you, but in my case I like to leave the onion fairly chunky, but if you like you can also cut it very finely. The reason why I leave it chunky is because this dish will cook for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and I think it's quite nice to find the texture of the onion as well alongside the meat. The dish I'm cooking today will be enough for 2 to 3 people, so entirely up to you how much garlic you put in. Actually you don't have to put any if you're not keen on garlic. But I will be adding a couple of medium-sized cloves today, and the first thing I'll do is to obviously remove the peel, mostly because this is a little bit old now, but if it was fresh I would also left the peel on, but I will remove it today, and I'll give this a little squash with my knife like this, and I'll leave it whole. I've added a little olive oil in a frying pan, and I've also added my onion and the garlic whilst everything is cold. And I will leave until it reaches temperature, and it will sizzle for about 5 minutes, so that the onion cooks and becomes slowly and soft, and of course also the garlic will release flavour. This is the same pan which I will be using throughout, so do ensure that you've got big enough pan, as this will be the only one I'll be using, and I will save also washing up. This is my affordable version of carne alla pizzaiola. You do not need to spend a lot of money on meat, as this dish, as long as your meat is thinly sliced, you do not actually have to use prime steaks or anything like that, which is the contrary to what some people will say, but I will show you how lovely this will come. So I've got 5 slices here which I've defrosted earlier, and this packet, by the way, weighs 395 grams, and the 5 slices costed me £4.75, to give you some context. Being that the steaks are very thin, it's not a problem anyway, but just for good measures, I've got a little basher here. It cost me £5 on eBay, and I'll go along and I'll go in the middle of each steak, and I'll give it a gentle bash, and I'll move towards the outside. So I'll move this out of the way and I'll show you. Like that, and go towards the outside. Like that, and go towards the outside. And by doing so, you're making the steak a little bit larger. It will cook easier, but also be slightly tender. But do ensure you don't go in the middle, just go on the side and move towards the outside, just like this. And then you can turn around if you like and go ahead. The only problem is that I'm in my log cabin and the whole kitchen is shaking because of the amount of bashing I'm doing. So you must probably can hear a lot of movement. Second tip I'll give you to make sure that your meat cooks properly and it doesn't curl: go on the side where you've got a little fat, and just make a couple or 3 incisions, so that when you cook the meat, it will stay whole and it will not curl. And if, like me, your knife is not up to the job today, just go with your scissors and do it with your scissors. That works also very well. So the meat is ready to be cooked. I'll wait until the onions are done, and in the meantime I'll show you what to do with the other ingredients. I made a video the other day where I compared the taste of a couple of pasta dishes using 2 types of tins of tomato, an expensive one and a cheaper one. The expensive one was £1.40, the cheaper and more affordable brand was 45p. So that's what I'm using today. This is a tin of chopped canned tomatoes, total cost 45 pence. And I have not added any salt to my onions, and this is the only time I'll be adding salt to my tomato sauce here, or chopped tomatoes I should say. Followed by some pepper. I would advise not to put a lot of pepper if you're cooking for children, they're not very keen. And the last ingredient for my sauce is some oregano. I've got a little teaspoon here so that I can give you an idea, a better idea of quantity. So I will fill one up and see what it looks like. Yeah, one full teaspoon of oregano is enough, and this will be the key ingredient to give your carne alla pizzaiola that pizzaiola taste that you have in pizza, because oregano is what actually they put in pizza when they make pizzas, and this is will give you that lovely and beautiful flavor. So back to my onions, which have softened up, and by the way, the temperature is on a medium low. I've got mine on number 4 out of 9, mostly because I do not really want to burn the garlic, otherwise it won't be very nice. But next job is to add my chopped tomatoes. In they go. And I'll mix everything together until all of the ingredients have blended together. The breadcrumbs in this recipe are there to provide additional texture and also carbohydrates. So really the amount you put in is entirely up to you. But for the benefit of the video today, I decided that I will be weighing the amount I put in, and bearing in mind that these are fresh bread, stale bread I should say, clearly there will be more water content than what it would be if you were to use the dry stuff. So I can see I'm up to 73 grams. I think I'll go up to 100 and I'll stop. 89, perfect, 99, 98, that'll do nicely. So as I said before, if you're using dry breadcrumbs, also very good, but either you use maybe half the amount, or if you want to use 100 grams, make sure that maybe you add another half a tin of tomatoes, otherwise it will become too dry at the end, because clearly the dry stuff will be absorbing more water. And whenever I make breadcrumbs, I use any type of bread. I don't discriminate at all, white and brown, black, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's all the same for the purpose of this recipe. If you've got black bread or brown bread, though it tends to be a little bit heavier, so you might want to put a little bit less, but depending on the quantities, it doesn't really matter too much. So I've actually added the breadcrumbs to my tomato and onion, and I'll mix them together for no more than about a minute, so that the breadcrumbs absorb some of the sauce now. And literally less than a minute, and I'm now moving everything back into a separate container so that they can cool down, and I can use the pan to do the steaks. And as always, it's down to personal preferences, but if you want to mop up the juices with some bread later, maybe you can add a little bit more tomatoes if you want, or less breadcrumbs. Or if you like it even drier, just add more breadcrumbs or less tomato. You can regulate it, but this is what I'm doing today, and that gives you an idea of the consistency that I'll be using. Time to shallow fry the little steaks next. I've added a little olive oil, and I'll use the first steak as a mop to spread it across the pan, and I'll add the rest. At the moment the temperature is on medium, by the way. They don't need to be on very high because they're very thin and they will soon cook. A couple of minutes in and my steaks are ready to be turned. You can see that they're releasing quite a bit of water, which actually is not a bad thing, because that will be all juices that I will add to the final dish, of course. So I'll just turn them all around now. And I'll give them another 2 or 3 minutes and they will be done. So the steaks are nearly ready. They are a little bit bloodied, but that's fine. They do not have to be totally cooked at this stage. And remember what I said, leave the juices behind. So back to my mix, and I will split this in half, and I'll put some in here first on top of my juices. And I'll spread it evenly with my spatula. Today I've decided to use some cheddar, but you can also use Parmigiano Reggiano if you like, or you can use any cheese that melts nicely. The reason why I've gone for cheddar is because I fancy the flavour of the mature cheddar. This is extra mature actually, and I think it will compensate the flavour of the mozzarella nicely, which I'll be adding at the end. So I'll put another slice over here. And I'm now going back and I'll add my meat on top of my cheddar and the tomato mix, and that's perfect. But as we love cheese, and this is very optional, I've decided to go back and add a further slice of cheddar on top of each steak, followed by the remaining mix, and I'll make sure that I cover each piece of steak obviously with this, so that everything is covered. And I'll go ahead now and add my mozzarella. This is one bowl of fresh mozzarella, cost 89 pence. There you go. Looking very good. I'll place the lid on and I'll leave it on a low temperature, number 4 out of 9 in my case. If you've got gas, by the way, turn it on the very, very minimum setting. And I'll leave it alone now. I won't touch it. I will not remove the lid, I promise, for 15 minutes. That is 1-5. The steaks are almost done. Everything is cooked. It's just a matter of getting everything amalgamated together. But then for the last 5 minutes, I will be adding some olives and some capers. But I'll show you that. So see you then. Now let's do some calculations, shall we? So the meat was £4.75. I've got my trusted calculator here. Well, £4.75, in it goes. Then I bought a bowl of mozzarella, the cheapest I could find, and that was 89 pence, so in it goes. Also I mentioned that I bought the most economical tin of chopped tomato, and that was 45p. So I get to a total of £6.09 so far. Now I will be adding some olives, some capers, also put some cheddar in, salt, pepper and spices, whatever, electricity, although mine is solar powered, but never mind. So it sounds like I'm negotiating with you, but I'll throw in another couple of pounds for all of those things, and I've been very generous, but let's just do it. So plus £2, and I get to a total cost of £8.09 by the time it's cooked. Now this meal will easily feed 3 people, most probably 4, but let's be cautious, say 3 people. So if I divide that number by 3, I'll get a total of £2.70 per person. Now, this is to evidence that actually you do not have to spend an arm and a leg to eat meat either. Some people will say to me though, oh yeah, but you know, the meat you're sourcing is not good quality, it's not ethical, sometimes they say. I disagree with that, because actually anything you buy from supermarkets these days has got to be quality standard approved. So actually the meat might not be the top quality meat, but for this dish it's okay. You don't need to buy high quality meat to cook like this, because it will become lovely and tender. But my argument though is that even if you were to source the cheapest ingredients from your supermarket, just like I have today with this recipe, and you come up with something which costs £2.70, surely, bearing in mind that you've cooked it at home and you know what you've put in, it's going to be a lot better than buying some junk food or some takeaways, and they will not cost you £2.70, I'm sure. So I think you get my point. Anyway, let's wait until this is done and I'll show you the rest. So 15 minutes on and I'm nearly there, so let's take a look. You can see, by the way, how much more liquid has been released, so you can see why I did put quite a bit of breadcrumbs in there, but it smells and looks delicious. So I did mention olives and capers, and I'll start very much with the olives. Entirely up to you really what sort of olives you use. This is a combination of green olives and black olives, but I keep them in olive oil. The black olives are pitted, whereas the green olives are not. Simply because that's what I could find on the supermarket when I bought them. So I'm gonna add 3 full dessert spoons, and if you've got children, by the way, and they're not keen on olives, don't put them in. You can actually end the dish now if you wish. And the next ingredient is going to be capers, as I mentioned earlier. I'm showing them to you because they always come in salted water, and I highly recommend that you remove them using a teaspoon like I'm doing right now, and I think 1 teaspoon will be enough. But also give them a rinse under current water, cold water, so that you remove the salt. You can always add the salt at the end if you need more salt, but do remove the salt. And they can be very salty at times, so safe to do so. Here you go, they go in. And I'll gently mix everything together so that my olives and the capers are embedded within my pizzaiola meat. And if I find the lid, there it is. I'll put this back on and I'll leave it to cook for another 3 or 4 minutes, but even lower, number 2 I've got now, so that everything infuses and then it's cooked. 5 minutes on and I'm ready, and I have to say the addition of the olives and the capers have added a lovely and distinguished sort of flavour coming up. But what I want to do though, I want to show you the steak so that you get an appreciation. So if I'll go and dish a piece out without making a mess, hopefully. So here it is. And I'll scoop a little bit of the wonderful sauce also. So there you go. And of course, although there are breadcrumbs in there, you can still use bread to mop it up. And I should have said about breadcrumbs that if you make dry breadcrumbs, you do not need to freeze them. There is a little video I made a little while back up here. I'll put a little link up here if you want to see how to make dry breadcrumbs and keep them forever, well, until you use them, of course. But I think I mentioned earlier, the breadcrumbs are made for this because the bread was fresh. I actually put it in the freezer, so I will only use as and when, otherwise it will go moldy inside a container. So let's test this now. It's really tender, and because the meat was very thinly sliced, it cooked no problem at all, and it's incredibly delicious. One thing I'll say though, if you've got children, I mentioned earlier, you might want to check with them before you add olives and capers, because the taste is there. But I like it, but I'm an adult, of course. So there you go, £2.70, not bad at all. And actually, one thing I wanted to say is that some people get confused with the Mediterranean diet, and they think that it's an expensive thing. It's actually driven more often than not by Cucina Povera, which means poor style of cooking. Because if you rewind the clock 40-50 years ago, they didn't have prime ingredients. They cooked with what the land produced. The meat wasn't the best either. So the reason why people choose to actually adopt expensive food is because it's easier to cook. But actually, if you cook food with love and attention and you take your time, you can see that actually you end up with incredibly beautiful and flavorful meals, just like this one, without having to spend an arm and a leg. So try and see what you think. Let me know in the comments, and I'm sure that you and your children will love it. Ciao ciao, arrivederci and buon appetito.